Today we're going to do a film that won a lot of praise and Academy Awards recently, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, called American Beauty. I analyzed this with classes in school, and I've reanalyzed it now, so I think I have a lot to say about it. The star, especially Kevin Spacey, wonderful. The story, I used to think great, now I think interesting, but it still has a significant message, and the point is easy to miss, I think. The central character, Lester Burnham. Burnham, I assume Burnham, I imagine. Lester works in some office. I would assume this is California. He and his family live in the suburbs. Pretty nice house, pretty nice yard. His wife works in real estate. She's pretty. Wants to be successful. They have one child, Janie. Janie is now about 16. Excuse me. Okay. Their suburban life. The film is partly, maybe primarily, but partly a satire. It satirizes somewhat clumsily, I think, American culture, American values. This has been done before. Pretty easy to satirize. Middle-class values. Wife Carolyn is obsessed with material success. Has bought into, or accepts, has embraced the ethic of positivity. Think positively. Must think positively. No negativity. All this nonsense. This nonsense, which tends to produce material success, is true, but at the price of absurdities, but still material success. Okay. Janie, the daughter, is, I think, probably a loner, somewhat alone, a little bit of an outsider, would like to be an insider, would like to be popular in the in crowd. Okay. The neighborhood, enlightened, I suppose, two homosexual males, one played beautifully by a well-known actor. I don't remember his name, but he was a star on TV and space shows and things like that for a long time, I think. Sorry, I don't know his name. He and another man, Jim, as I remember, both of them named Jim. Physical fitness, running together, but they're obviously gay, a gay couple. No problem for many people in the neighborhood. Okay. So, enlightened, I suppose, politically correct is more like it. Carolyn wants very much to raise nice roses in her garden, and both Jims admire Carolyn and her roses, admire her roses and all that. Okay, roses actually play a little bit of a role in the movie. Okay, next door. I guess a new family moves in next door, and they are the Fitzes. I assume F-I-T-Z. It could be F-I-T-T-S. I haven't seen the names written. They too are a one-child family, and their child is 18, maybe, a little older. Ricky. Okay. Colonel Fitz is a retired Marine officer. And the Marines are easy to satirize, tough, narrow-minded, if not stupid. slightly violent man. We don't think of him. He's not as violent as one might depict a Marine as being, but he's kind of a violent man. Ricky is the central character to the understanding of the film, even though he's not the central character of the film. Central character has to be Lester. But in order to understand the film, one must understand Ricky. And he is remarkable for American filmdom. Nothing like him that I know of in American films. So let's take a minute for Ricky. Ricky probably had a pretty rough childhood. Probably was an outsider. And his father certainly a violent man. Somewhat violent, as I said. Now we know that Ricky, relatively early in the film, we know that Ricky sells drugs. He sells drugs. How do we know this? I won't get to that right away. In fact, I won't do Ricky right away. It's more important to do Lester first. What happens first of greatest significance, two things. Lester sees Janie has a new friend, and that new friend is a cheerleader. Janie's a cheerleader too, so I mean, one would think she's a cheerleader. She must be popular, an insider, but no. And this new cheerleader, blonde, kind of cute. Really, she's not very pretty at all. But has a very, what should we call it? A sexy face. That is, she. In any case, Lester and Carolyn go to see their daughter perform at a basketball game. Perform meaning a cheerleader. Cheerleaders cheer sometimes, and during the breaks come out and do cheers. And Lester has a kind of epiphany, a religious experience. When he sees Angela, the new friend, the blonde cheerleader, Angela, perfect angel, Angela, it changes his life. He sees that which he longs for, which his soul longs for. Well, this is satirical, of course, but it changes his life. He sees only her out on that floor, and it seems to him that she sees only him. Okay, Lester's 45, maybe? 40 to 45 at least. Balding, not in very good physical condition. Well, what happens is an existential moment. Because suddenly he is in full rebellion against the conditions of his life. His marriage is nothing. Now, the film has no nudity, and the film is a little unfairly labeled R. No nudity, a minor sex scene, but nothing happens really. The only scene that I recall, at least, that merits R, but it's kind of important for the understanding of the film. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to deal with this a little bit explicitly. Has Lester and Carolyn in bed together, but they sleep somewhat apart, a little bit apart, and Lester is, masturbating. Well, that's important because that is a perfect representation of their marriage. Why? Okay, well, Angela, of course. But what is their relationship? Well, Carolyn is so superficial, so silly, so stupid. She is so entirely a representative of this stupidly materialistic, positivistic culture, American culture. Success, you can do it if you try, Don't think negative thoughts, think only positive thoughts. We see her as she shows houses to potential customers, and she just bounces, and the customers are lower class mostly, actually, kind of sullen and not convinced at all, and put her off, but she continues to bounce and think positive thoughts. And one very telling moment comes when a couple has been looking at the house, and they never smile a bit, and they don't yield one bit, and finally they leave, and she breaks into almost hysterical tears. But quickly she regains her self-mastery and thinks, and puts a smile on her face and thinks positive thoughts. Now, I wonder if Korean culture buys into this too. Business buys into this, and business gives seminars and imports teachers to motivational speakers and teachers who teach positivity. Must think positivity, aggressive success. Capital S, the God is success. Okay. Now, Lester rebels. He rebels against everything. First of all, he insults the boss at his job. He doesn't want that stupid job. But Lester is no fool. So they try to fire him, and he says that he wants basically what is called a generous severance pay. That is, a payoff before he leaves. And if he doesn't receive the severance pay, he tells the gay manager, not the owner, but the manager, if he doesn't receive a generous severance pay, $70,000, he will tell everyone some of the things that the owner has done. Whoa! They give him the money. So, home he goes, but with $70,000. Well, that's pretty good. It will last them a while anyway. Though now Carolyn becomes the wage earner. Second rebellion. He starts lifting weights. He's going to make his body worthy of Angelus. And third, within his marriage, he is just brutally outspoken to his wife. I don't remember some of the things, but they're very funny, but brutal too. Some of the things he says to her, he is just... He will not accept the conditions of his life anymore. And if the consequence is death, I think he fully... I guess it's one of those it is an existential moment when one sees, after all, what is the worst one has to fear? Death. I guess. Torture and lingering illness, I suppose. Other than that, other than these, what is the worst that life can bring us? If we are in full rebellion against material success, if material failure does not daunt us, does not intimidate us, then the worst is death. And if one doesn't fear death, then one becomes suddenly a creature without fear. If this is authentic, to use existential terms, if he is taking a step toward a Sartrean, Jean-Paul Sartre, S-A-R-T-R-E, main spokesman of this kind of thing, an authentic life, and Heidegger before him, then this is genuine. In fact, philosophically, at least existentially, this is a good thing, perhaps even religiously. It's debatable which is more heroic: the dogged, stubborn earning of wages and providing material comfort and security to oneself and one's family, although one hates one's job, one hates one's life, One hates what one has become, a kind of slave to the boss, a kind of slave to one's wife, a kind of slave to more or less humiliating subservience or rebellion. That is, no, 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 no. This, I won't accept this. This is intolerable, and I'm going to call it intolerable. And either there will be some changes, or I will face my own extinction. That's debatable, admittedly. Certainly many people and traditionalists will say that the first, hanging in there, doggedly supporting, enduring the conditions of one's life, that this is more heroic. But the existentialists say that rebellion is more heroic. Finding some true self. Now, this is very romantic, and existentialism in the end, I'm afraid, is just another, in this form at least, another footnote to romanticism. To believe that one even has a true self is very romantic. To believe that one can act in harmony with that true self is romantic. To believe in something called heroism is romantic. At least heroism of this Byronic kind of style. So this, at least, is romantic thinking. Not that all existentialism is necessarily romantic, but this is. Okay, but Lester rebels existentially, and he becomes very outspoken. And at a dinner that he goes to with his family, he goes outside, and a waiter at that dinner is Ricky. This is where he meets Ricky, his next-door neighbor, after all. Ricky offers him drugs, and Lester, for the first time in his life, smokes some marijuana with Ricky outside. And he finds Ricky very interesting, because Ricky, wow, son of a retired Marine colonel, just smoking and pushing, selling marijuana. He's done this for, I guess, a long time, a couple of years anyway, and he has accumulated quite a lot of money. So, interesting guy, and Lester admires him and respects him. And the boss comes out and says, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be waiting on my tables. You're fired." Well, this amuses Ricky. What does Ricky care about waiting on the table? He only gets these little jobs as a cover for his drug business, which is doing pretty well, apparently. Ricky, too, then, is a rebel, and Lester admires him for this. Okay. Now, Ricky sees Janie, and Ricky has a kind of epiphany. By the way, such epiphanies, especially romantic love, are fully romantic, too. It's almost as if the film presents us with two alternatives. One, the absurdities of middle-class life. Two, romantic rebellion against such absurdities. I think in the long run both are absurd. But one feels better. The romantic feels better. Its consequences, if one accepts the consequences, there's something kind of admirable about that. But admirably rebelling against the conditions of one's life and marching directly towards one's extinction, heroic, question mark? Kind of admirable, I guess. You choose. What does one have to choose from in the end anyway? In a sense, though, there is a third choice, and that's where Ricky is concerned. Now I want to tell you about Ricky. Ricky is a remarkable character, and I suspect there's no parallel to him in all American films, and maybe anywhere. Ricky is a mystic. He is a full-fledged mystic of a special kind. And that American film could present a mystic is absolutely incredible that Hollywood, big name Hollywood, but, let's look at this a little more closely. It turns out that Ricky's past is kind of interesting. I forget what he got into some kind of trouble, probably fighting, probably because guys were picking on him. And he got into some kind of trouble, and his parents sent him to a military school. Military school, wow. Some military schools are pretty tough on teenagers, and some are intended for kids who need some discipline. At least this is the traditional view. Anyway, many Koreans would do very well at military school. All that discipline and structure. Anyway, at the military school, someone called him some bad names or something. I don't remember some details, but that doesn't matter. Ricky nearly killed him. He nearly killed him. There was such explosive rage in him. Look at his father. His father had slapped him around some, never too brutally, but certainly had slapped him around. And Ricky was used to it, even. But suddenly he exploded in rage, and he nearly killed the kid. And my bet is that the kid was bigger than he was, too. So, they put him in a psychiatric ward. And as he tells the story, a lot of this is unbelievable, but it doesn't matter. It's a film. As he tells the story, for 2 years he was more or less drugged up on drugs. That is, clinical drugs for his treatment. Because, of course, among the absurdities, at least on the surface absurdities, we use drugs for lots of purposes, among them to correct psychiatric disorders. And Ricky was diagnosed as having some psychiatric disorder, so they put him on drugs. While on drugs, he has a real epiphany, I would call it. Now, in the first place, I think his epiphany is non-theistic, or if it is theistic at all, it is very much in tune with what I have been saying. He has a vision is not it, because there is no content to his vision. He has, I guess probably the nearest you could call this is nature mysticism. Nature mysticism. Nature mystics have again, the word vision will not do. It's totally inadequate. But let's call it vision. They don't see anything. Have a vision of nature and of the force that drives, propels, inhabits, permeates nature. Call it God. Call it God. But in nature mysticism, it's not God. Pagan religions, some pagan religions have this. Shintoism of Japan, I'm sure, has this. American Indian religions have this. And even Indian religion, at its best, is full of this. Ricky experiences being, capital B, let's call it, or the deity that is being, capital B. And he is totally at peace. He's totally at peace. And his message, which will be my message too, fear not. His whole message is fear not. There's nothing to fear. Now, how do we know he's had this experience? Because he starts to get to know Janie, next door girl Janie, and he is crazy about her. He even burns her name in the lawn next to, separating their two houses, in large letters as 1 meter, let's say, Janie. And she looks out the window and there she sees her name. Who is this crazy kid? Who is this maniac? And then at school, he comes up to Janie, and Angela. Angela thinks he's weird because Angela is totally, or apparently totally, a product of and a reflection of the American culture. So Ricky looks weird, and he is weird. He's a loner, he's an outsider, he's weird. But Janie knows something about being an outsider. And besides, Ricky is a special outsider because he has no fear at all of anything. And he sees with such clairvoyance. He sees through things. He sees through people. He's fearless. And that's one mark of this kind of mystic. Because the mystic realizes there's nothing to fear. Of this kind, and of any kind, any mystic. A mystic who is afraid of something is a contradiction in terms. No mystic should have fear of anything. What is there to fear? Death? Death is not real. We can see already that Lester is not quite there. But Lester has reached the kind of fearlessness. But his fearlessness is rebellion. Open rebellion. Not Ricky's. Spiritual. There's no spirituality to Lester yet. Okay. So, Ricky just approaches Janie, talks with her, and she's interested because she sees there's something special in him. And he takes her over to his house and shows him some films in his film collection. He has a large film collection that he has spent a lot of money on. And to cover that, he gets these little part-time jobs to convince his parents that he has some income so that he can buy these things. But the jobs are all facade, all front. Okay. He tells Janie two stories that are that reflect where he is. He said that once maybe I can only remember one of them, but it doesn't matter. Once he saw a homeless woman who had frozen to death, in the street. And he has never recovered from the beauty. Remember the title of the film is American Beauty. The beauty of that scene. Beauty? Now, do most people regard that as beautiful? Even the people who have no social conscience will not find death like that beautiful. He finds it beautiful. And we're going to try to understand why he finds it beautiful. He had seen another death. Birds, I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. Death is beautiful. Anyone who says that death is beautiful is already at least interesting. The question is what one does with that. If one hates life, and the corollary to that is death, and one seeks one's own death, suicide, and so forth, this is not exactly mystical. But for Ricky's there, because then he shows this footage to Janie, footage meaning film, and it is haunting. Don't know where he took it, maybe at a school, outside. Autumn, perhaps late autumn. A wind and an inner courtyard, let's call it. Outside, though. The wind is blowing leaves, brown leaves, and above all, a paper bag around. And Ricky filmed this, and filmed it, and filmed it. That wind blowing those leaves, but specifically that brown bag around. There's Ricky's mysticism. That's the most important footage in the film, because it appears a second time later. And the message of that film, and the message of Ricky is, a spiritual being, the words have no meaning here. A spiritual being implies that this being is identifiable, has some form or figure, and of course it doesn't. Spiritual words are impotent here, as ultimately everywhere maybe. But let's say a spiritual being is symbolized in that wind blowing that bag around. And that spiritual being is everywhere. And that spiritual being is in that dead woman too. And that woman is a little closer to that spiritual being now, or having died, than she was in her lifetime. And Ricky has been there, and Ricky knows there's nothing to fear. Neither in life nor in death. Neither in life nor in death is there anything to fear. Ricky understands that in his core, in the core of his being. He understands that more than anything. Even the word understands has no meaning, because understand seems to be cognitive, thinking, words. And this is not cognitive, this is intuitive. And even the word intuitive will not quite do. He understands it in the center of his being. He understands it more than he understands. It's more real than anything around him. It is. Everything else may or may not be. It is. And what is this it? Can't say. It's ineffable. Well, the film is serious insofar as it makes this message already. That an American Hollywood film could make this statement already is very remarkable. Because what we have here is the making of a great film. Because the clash between what Ricky is and what that culture is comical, is hilarious, is painful maybe, but if Ricky's right, even the absurdities of American culture are not real. Even the absurdities of American culture, and for a moment let's assume that American culture is more absurd than any other culture, and I think it is, and the world pursues it enthusiastically, and the film implies this too. Okay, let's shift for a moment and discuss this American culture that's so satirized. Now, Carolyn has a hero. Her hero is Buddy the King, some last name, especially if the last name is some ethnic Czecho or Yugo name, because America welcomes all, and that's good. Let's call his name Buddy Hrudka, Hrudka, or something. But for Carolyn, he's the king. Why? Because he is the most successful real estate. He runs the most successful real estate business around, and around means maybe Los Angeles area. He makes millions, and he is every salesperson of. Oh, that's right. It's at a dinner celebrating in his honor, Buddy the King, that Lester can't stand it anymore and goes outside and meets Ricky and smokes some weed, smokes some marijuana, because he can't stand that culture. Now, Buddy is maybe 50, but he is bouncy and positive. He exudes positivity. He is positivity. And his message, be positive and you can be successful. You will be successful. He's divorced and he's living with a very young, very pretty young woman who herself, briefly, we just get a glimpse of this, can't stand it anymore. Because such a culture is such a lie. It's so vulgar. It's so self-deceiving. It's a lie. This kind of positivity, and who can stand such lies? But Carolyn loves it, and Buddy lives it. So Carolyn almost offers herself to Buddy in her adulation, in her gushing exaltation of Buddy the King. And this almost makes Lester sick. Lester could not care if she had an affair with Buddy. Lester is past caring about her. Or, I mean, she is too absurd. She's too absurd. Okay. Now, I wonder what the reaction of people who watch this and think about Korean culture might be. And I don't know myself. But anyway, so pretty soon, Buddy and Carolyn start to have a love affair. They go to a motel, but this is presented in comic terms. This is comedy. And she is so happy to be with Buddy. And, oh yeah, the young girl has left Buddy. I shouldn't call him Buddy, I should call him the King. That's the best name for him. He's the King. King of local real estate. Success. The incarnation, the embodiment of success, material success, and how to get there, how to do it. Okay, so now, plot is moving along. Lester in full rebellion, wife not understanding and a little bit angry. But there's a moment when there might be some hope for them. Two moments actually. One, he makes advances to his wife, and his wife, who hasn't seen these advances for a long time, is agreeable. They're in the living room though, and he pulls her, she's laughing and happy actually, toward the sofa, but she says, no, not there, not on the sofa, it might spoil the $1,500 sofa. Immediately the price tag, and he realizes there's no hope at all. There's no hope at all. She is totally materialistic, totally into this positivity mythos. That's the word for it, mythos. No hope. So he's openly rebellious. Now, things move along. At a certain point, now, Ricky starts to spend more time over at Lester's house, and Lester works out in his garage. And the garage has some glass windows, as many garages do. In the front, the door even, I think. Anyway, what? We see Colonel Fitz slap Ricky around twice. It's not terrible, knocks him down, but I forget why he gets so angry at him. Twice. And by the way, we get glimpses of Mrs. Fitz, who is the single most despairing character that I can remember having seen. She is the embodiment of despair. She loves her son, must love her husband, but she is a creature caught. There's no escape. Does he hit her around? Maybe, but I doubt it, because she's totally compliant, totally obsequious, but she's in despair. Why? That man, though he's not terrible. Oh, by the way, he's homophobic, because he's out in front raking the lawn or something. Oh no, when they move in, the two Jims, the homosexual Jims, come. Hi, I'm Jim, and he's Jim, and we just want to welcome you to our neighborhood. Hi! They're fully positive. Colonel Fitz is disgusted. He's a caricature. It's time I use that word. He is a caricature of the Marine. Tough, eats nails for breakfast, and profoundly homophobic. Now, the topic I'm on, remember, is American culture. How is it? The satirizing of American culture here is totally superficial. It's been done many times. Materialistic, violent. Colonel Fitz, homophobic, positive, I said materialistic. I'm leaving a couple of things out, but they'll come up. Okay, so Colonel Fitz is enraged at the sight of these faggots, F-A-G-G-O-T-S, which is American slang for homosexuals. These homos, he would say, because older generation, enraged at the sight of them. He's violent, we know, because he knocks Ricky around. Also, when Ricky brings Janie over to the house, the parents aren't there. He shows Janie his father's plate collection of Nazi memorabilia. It's not a big collection, but even Ricky's kind of proud of it, mainly because he's trying to be proud of his father, trying to keep some contact with his father. Ricky is not hard and rebellious like Lester. Ricky knows he has an absurd father and mother, but he knows that everything in his culture is absurd too. And Ricky is basically compassionate. Ricky is a kind of saint. A saint who sells drugs, please take note. But not the hard drugs, just marijuana. And Ricky is a kind of saint. He's a mystic for sure. Okay, we move along. One evening, Colonel Fitz sees Ricky in Lester's garage where Lester is working out. So he has no shirt on, Kevin Spacey. Kind of hairy-chested guy, trying to get himself into shape, presumably for some he hopes for some erotic encounter, some love affair with Angela, the high school girl. He wants to be worthy of her, because we wonder if he's so rebellious, what are his goals? His only goal really is to be with Angela. Anyway, Ricky's in there with him, and at a certain point, Colonel Fitz loses sight of them. They go around a corner or something. Colonel Fitz is convinced that Lester and Ricky are having a homosexual encounter right there. Well, he is so homosexual, he is so homophobic that this just about drives him insane right on the spot. He goes home and gets one of his guns. Okay, stop. Meanwhile, Carolyn is coming home from a motel encounter with the king. Maybe they've even broken up. I don't know. For several months... Oh, I've left a couple of things out. Lester has a job at Burger King. Or McDonald's, doesn't matter. At Burger King. And Lester, a somewhat educated man, left a fairly high-paying job, middle class, working at Burger King with a cute little hat on and a cute little outfit. Oh, it's hilarious. And Kevin Spacey, who is a great, great actor. We have some great actors, and Kevin Spacey is one of them, and I think everyone agrees that he could play this role so well after playing bad guys like psychopathic killers in Seven, for which he won an Academy Award. He's won 2 or 3 Academy Awards. He really is a great actor, I think, but many people think. Okay, Lester, at the window, the takeout window, the cars come through. Can I have your order? Well, one day, Carolyn, of course, didn't even know he had this job because there's no communication between them. And who drives up in a car to order together their burger? But Carolyn and the king in the car together. She's sitting pretty close to him, too. And he sees this and smiles sardonically. It amuses him. It's too perfect. It's too perfect. Yes, it's okay. It's okay. You two are perfect together. You two deserve each other. This makes me happy that you are sleeping with him. You're both so absurd that you deserve each other in your richest, profoundest absurdity. No anger in him at all. And Kevin Spacey does this so well. As they order their takeout Whoppers, let's hope. Perfect Whoppers. Whopper is a perfect symbol of American culture. The name, absurd, non-linguistic. The marketing, absurd. The blind, mindless buying into all of this, absurd. I'm not saying that a Korean is absurd when he or she buys a Whopper. But if the Korean knows English, and if the Korean has observed American culture, a person can still enjoy a Whopper, but I think we probably should enjoy it with a smile on our face. a smile, and a sense of the absurdities of the culture that produced this Whopper. And the Whopper is a symbol of that culture. By the way, I must share something with you. About 5-6 years ago, I used to watch carefully Korean trash. I still do a little bit. And I've picked up some interesting things from Korean trash. But the treasure of all, including, I'll show Dr. Shin sometime if I haven't before, I have a piece of calligraphy apparently painted by Kim Jong-pil. Kim Jong-pil, upstairs. It has his name on it. And people who know something about this agree he did it. And maybe it'll be worth some money someday. Okay, maybe, what, at most, Oshimon 1. Okay, I'll take it. But the absurdities in the trash. But the treasure of all is a little framed piece. I need to find something roughly the size. Maybe about this size, a little bigger. White painted wooden frame. Glass cover. And the frame is broken. It was broken when I got it. The glass has a cut or a shatter, or maybe only half of the glass is there. That's perfect too. And the picture is basically a Whopper. It's a photo of a Whopper. And that is a beautiful satire of, it's a satire of pop art, and it represents pop art. Someone thought highly enough of the Whopper to cut out the picture, put a frame, a wooden frame around it, cover it with glass, lovingly. It's hard to explain why it's absurd, but absurd it is. It's hilarious. And I keep it in my room at school, and my students all see it. And I keep next to it another work of pop art, an angel. Now this is, let's be fair. This kind of thing might very well appeal to middle school, elementary school children. Pop art, that is, they will have a picture of H.O.T. framed in gold, or you name the pop idol. Doesn't matter. And is that bad? No, it's not bad. It's touching. But if anyone older than, say, 13, maximum 13, takes such things seriously, if anyone older doesn't see at least a little humor in it, I'm afraid that person has nothing, there's nothing happening between that person's ears. That person is culturally, intellectually, in this matter at least, not very sharp, not very observant, not very thoughtful. Okay, and you have to become this way too, young people. Think what this means. Is this beautiful? Okay, all beauty is relative. That is, the Mona Lisa there, La Gioconda, people who are interested in art have found it beautiful. I would say it's not a great piece of art, and I would tell you why sometime. But what do I find beautiful? That I don't have to name the paintings, but I find some absolutely beautiful. And it's all relative, I admit that. And people could laugh at my love for and almost adoration of some art. And it has its absurd side, it's true. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But let's get back to the film. I wanted to tell you about that work of art, though. And sometime I'll bring it home. It's in bad shape. And maybe Dr. Shin can put it on film as a wonderful... Oh, and the angel. The Christmas angel next to it, which I keep next to it. And some other things. Okay. Back to the film. Carolyn, after some tryst, T-R-Y-S-T, that is, some meeting with her lover, is on her way home, and we know that for the past several months she has taken shooting lessons. She has learned to shoot. This is the most absurd, the least acceptable aspect of the film. But and she's on her way home because she has decided she's going to kill her husband Lester. I'm sorry. the film becomes very weak and absurd at this point. But the reason why this is in the film is to push that violence, the violent aspect of American culture. Violence, violent, homophobic, materialistic, positive, buying into this, you can do it, everybody can do it, let's be rich, hooray, life has meaning if we're rich, life has meaning if we're successful. Do you hear us, Jung Mong Hun? If you're rich, life has meaning. Did you catch that? Jung Mong Hun? I don't think he was quite convinced of that. It's too absurd. Too absurd. And the people, the caricature of Korean moms who think that life will have meaning if their children are CEOs, right, or doctors and all that, this buying into material success a little too wholeheartedly. Admittedly, poverty is terrible, but this worship of material success is very unbecoming, really, and in the end, too unreflective, too thoughtless. But I think only caricatures of some people, Korean moms, buy into it, not real people. Real people just want happy lives for their children, of course, and hope that material success contributes to that. Okay, but we know, everybody knows, that it doesn't necessarily contribute to it at all. In fact, we all know that it can get in the way of happiness. And the real goal is happiness, not material success. Carolyn, on her way home to kill her husband, for God's sake. Colonel Fitz gone home to fetch his gun because he's going to kill Lester, too. Now, Angela is spending the night at Janie's, Lester's, Carolyn's house. Perfect. And Angela is certainly flirting with Lester. And Lester thinks, oh my God, happiness is near. If I can be alone with her, this would be the happiest moment of my life. Okay. We know, though, that two people maybe want to kill Lester. And this is almost a satire on American films. Which one did it? Oh my God, which one did it? Lester does have an erotic encounter with Angela. By the way, the symbol of Angela, and it's on the cover of most jackets of the videos of this film, shows Angela in a bathtub, water way high, rose petals covering the water. This, for Lester, is his vision of Angela, and it's absurd enough. We don't see anything, and so, as you can see, I mean, there is no nudity, or not that I remember anyway, in the film. But there's this very erotic scene, but we don't really see anything. It's just suggestive. And the rose, after all, can be almost a religious symbol. The rose is a symbol of romantic love and the quest for happiness in a love relationship. But romantic love really means passion. And passion really means sexual. And so romantic love is and should be satirized as an ultimate goal, because passion, any kind of passion, doesn't endure, ends quickly, is never satisfied, is insatiable, and in the end, any relationship based on it will die automatically. We know that. Everyone knows that. So to try to base one's life on that, of course, is absurd. But cultures are full of absurdities, and if there is no God, or if one does not take God or religious life seriously, and if one is looking for some ultimate, then what are the options? Material success and money. Erotic pleasure. What else is there? I don't know. There isn't much. Chase after it if you wish, but we all know that these things have no lasting value and cannot satisfy. And there's something kind of pathetic and something kind of absurd about such quests. Because such quests are performed disingenuously, my favorite word, that is, kind of insincerely, knowing that we're pursuing an illusion. We know we're pursuing illusions. On that subject, I think a lot of organized religion, institutional religion, is the same thing. We articulate these truths, we think, but we know very well that these truths literally cannot be true, that the truth eludes us, eludes words in the first place, and so it's the same thing, I think. Okay, almost at the end. Got it. Perfect. So, Lester, Carolyn has discovered something about Janie. I don't even remember what. And Carolyn is furious. And Angela is with her in her room spending the night. And Carolyn becomes so angry that she slaps Janie. Janie's had enough. Janie has had enough. Ricky comes over. Angela still scorns Ricky, but Ricky says, somewhat scornfully, but you have this great fear, Angela, of being ordinary. I left something out. The two girls smoked some weed together in Angela's car, of course. Angela's father and mother are divorced. Mother having erotic affairs with people. Angela's a little disturbed, but she tries to be so aggressively cool and in. And she tells Janie all these stories about her erotic escapades with older men, with everyone. But, here we go. And Janie admires her, and Janie thinks that much more, oh, I wish I could be more like Angela. But, now, Ricky comes in, looks at Angela and says, you have this great fear of being ordinary, and it rules your life. You are ordinary. That's the truth, of course, and Ricky has hit it. Boom. Because we're about to see why. And Ricky offers Janie, I have $40,000 saved. I can support us. Run away with me. Life for me has become intolerable in my home. Father hit him around again. For you too. I love you. Go with me. Janie goes. They go off. They will live in New York City. Presumably he will be a dealer. Okay. But Angela now goes downstairs, meets Lester in the living room, and it looks like they will make love. But she suddenly announces to him that she's a virgin. Well, this changes the whole film, of course. She had been for him a sex goddess. Perfect, 16-year-old, beautiful, voluptuous creature. A virgin? But for us too, this means that all those stories she told Janie were lies. Now, she could be lying now, but why would she lie to Lester? No reason, no. The other stories were lies. And Janie had half believed them anyway. And Ricky is right. She's ordinary, and her life is ordinary. And she's another desperate human being, desperate probably in search of a father, and that father may be Lester. Well, Lester is deflated, has no desire to consummate this relationship, is turned off in somewhat slang language, deflated, and he goes to the kitchen, opens the refrigerator, and just then he has a kind of vision. And what is that vision? That vision is that brown bag, Ricky's brown bag, blown around by the air. That's a religious vision. The fact that Lester has that religious vision right then, and we see the gun pointed at the back of his head, we know it's going to go off, dead. The fact that he has that vision makes the absurd statement that he has reached that plateau that Ricky has reached. I'm sorry, that's absurd. That's absurd. Lester has been in full rebellion, but he has not been on the mountain. So I'm afraid the film fails in that sense. Ricky then finds the body, and he says, beautiful. And he's right. Death is unreal and beautiful. Unreal because it's an illusion. But life is full of illusions, and God is everywhere. Ricky is probably a pantheist. I think that's pretty safe to say. A pantheist. Nature mysticism, pantheist. The film falls down now. I mean, I've been through it many times now. The film falls down because of this kind of non-theist. The nature mysticism works up to a point. But to accept Lester as having reached that plateau is too absurd. To accept Carolyn as buying into even the violence of our absurd culture is too absurd. And now, conclusion. Why the title, American Beauty? I believe the title is that yes, there is beauty, even in American culture. Even such an absurd, superficial, ugly culture as American culture is, has beauty. But we look in the wrong places for it, of course. Ricky has found it. Fear not. Fear not. A wonderful, beautiful message. In the end, I think the film is a little incoherent, but the message is there. Even in such an absurd culture as American culture is, there is beauty. But it's a kind of spiritual beauty that we have to look deeply to find. And frankly, most of us can't find it. And I don't claim to be able to find it either. But I kind of believe in the Ricky message that if there's beauty anywhere, it's not in these places where we look, but we're in places where we don't look. Thank you.